Discovery Weekly.
Welcome to Discovery Weekly, a bonus show from the podcast Discovery Show that's all about everything else we discovered throughout the week. I'm Zach.
I'm Kirk.
And I'm Matt.
And I discovered that it is Yellowstone's 150th birthday.
Oh,
Happy birthday, Yellowstone.
wow.
It has been a park for longer than the kind of the designation existed. But the story I found, and this will be linked in the show notes, it's a really cool one, is about the winter keeper at Yellowstone National Park. His name is Stephen Fuller, and he lives in a cabin on Yellowstone. And his job is when it's wintertime to make sure that the snow doesn't destroy everything. And so he and his wife live there, and he actually got this job in 1973. So he's watched Yellowstone for the past 50 years.
Wow.
And it snows so much there that he has to kind of go around to all the buildings and make sure the snow doesn't cave in the buildings. So throughout that entire time, he's doing that. And he basically, it was the first national park for America, and it actually turns 150 on March 1st. And he is the longest winter keeper in the history of the park. But basically, he said he's seen a lot of things that have changed. You know, he's seen a lot more. They've had record visitors, but then they also have had more wildlife coming back because here's an example from the article. Grizzly bears, whose numbers in the park dipped to just 136 in the 1970s, have been rescued from population freefall. Wolves deliberately exterminated by park rangers in the 20s were brought back in the 90s. And the bison population, which numbered at just 23 at one point.
23? That's as low as it got?
23 total.
Holy cow.
But today they're at 5,000.
Wow.
So the park is starting to kind of like become wild again, you know, after the weird practices of the early 1900s and earlier. But because of COVID, there was a huge rush of people in. But for the most part, people are pretty good about staying in there. Like staying on where they're supposed to be, roads and trails. And that is only, okay, so roads and trails are only 2% of the park's 2.2 million acres.
That's so many.
This is one of my dream parks to go to. I want to go to Yellowstone so bad. But it's just really cool to hear kind of this job, and that it made me think of all of the crazy national parks we have, and then even the national park like service, because it's a government issued kind of thing. And so I looked up more about this as well. So we have 63 national parks, and they are congressionally designated protected areas operated by the National Park Service. And the first one, Yellowstone, was signed into law by Ulysses S. Grant in 1872. And so it's just crazy. Ulysses S. Grant was the one who got this first park, and it's still amazing today.
A long time ago.
Yes, it was. But basically, they saw, even at this time, how important it would be to maintain places in their natural integrity because of how amazing they were. And I think that's just fascinating. And then I'll link in the show notes, because I highly recommend just going and taking a look at all of the different ones in here, because it really, you know how Windows does those, like, or whatever. Oh,
like the landscapes, the
landscape backgrounds,
screensaver things.
Every single one of them could be one. Every single one of these things is amazing. And a lot of them are also UNESCO designated World Heritage Sites, because some of these were based on like ancient populations or different things that would make it culturally significant. And then there's also some that are UNESCO designated biosphere reserves, which are apparently such tight and, I guess, synergized ecosystems that they wanted to keep the whole thing as just like, this is a very sophisticated ecosystem and we want to protect it. And I would highly recommend everybody go through and take a look at some of these. And it really is just amazing, kind of the natural stuff that's been preserved with the national parks. And I want to visit, I think, all of them probably. I don't think I would be disappointed by any of them.
So I was blessed to go as a kid. Now I wish that I was older and could have appreciated it more than I did. Funny story. My mom thought we knew we were going on a trip, right? And so my dad was like, yeah, let's go to Yellowstone Park. So we go all the way out west. And it's like 2 days into the trip. We've driven all over Yellowstone. We've seen all these animals, all these, waterfalls and all these beautiful things. And eventually she asks my dad, she's like, where's the swings and the slides? she thought that it was like a park.
Like a theme park?
I don't know. I don't know
like
what she thought.
Like a park for you to go play on a swing set. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
did they have one?
She was disappointed.
Oh no, I guess not.
No. But I will say some things that I do remember. I do remember being in a traffic jam for like 2 hours because of buffalo crossing the road, which was really cool. Looking back, it's cool. I hated it as a kid. I got really bored. But that was really cool. I remember Old Faithful was really boring. Again, I want to go back as a grown up because as a kid, I was like, they built this thing up to be like this cool, amazing thing. And I get why it is. But as a kid, I was like, it just looks like a fountain.
Water.
It just shot up for like 3 seconds and then it's gone. I don't get why this is special. And I remember that there was all of these pits that are the sulfur pits and stuff, and it smelled so bad. So that's what I remember about it. So I want to go back.
I do remember the kid brain synopsis we just got. There's a big stupid water. There's no swings, and it's stinky.
There's a big stupid water.
It's stupid buffaloes get you stuck, and you have nothing else to do.
Yeah, 1 star.
1 star.
No
Yellowstone,
swings.
eat it.
No swings.
I didn't see Kevin Costner once.
Oh man. Well, I found an article that this whole thing is just so good. It's a great article, but the story is it's amazing. It is about the first spacesuits that were made for the astronauts. It reads, one of the underrated technical challenges of going to the moon was designing the spacesuits. The suit had to be inflated and pressurized from the inside, meaning they had to carry around a tiny version of the atmosphere that human beings require to stay alive. The suits were, in essence, sophisticated balloons. They also had to be tough, though. They had to be able to withstand a temperature range of perhaps 500 degrees. From negative 280 degrees in shadow to upwards of 240 degrees in the sun, as well as survive being hit by, and I didn't even know this was a thing, survive by being hit by micrometeorites going 36,000 miles per hour while astronauts were wearing them.
What?
So this is what needed to be done for a spacesuit. But all of that, but they also highlight that the most daunting of the challenges wasn't all of those things, but it was making it flexible as well. Because the astronauts had to be able to do things,
to actually move.
Yeah, exactly. Because you could put them in a metal coffin, and they're going to be fine, but they're not going to do anything. But the company that actually did manage to figure out and solve these problems was not one that NASA was expecting. It was Playtex, the famous bra maker and the one that made girdles in the 1950s.
Girdles.
Yeah.
Girdles.
that I actually kept that in because I wanted to make it dates it for us.
Oh, yeah.
Girdles.
Yeah. For anybody that doesn't know, girdles are early Spanx.
By the way, I listened to a podcast the other day, and the Spanx lady is a billionaire because of that product. It's fascinating. That's a crazy story too. Anyway, it's different. They actually won the contract to make the suits as a subcontractor for Hamilton Standard. But then there was this whole big falling out thing, and Hamilton Standard was fired. And after the firing, NASA staged a competition to see who could make the best suit. So Playtex wasn't invited this time to participate in the face-off, and company officials immediately flew to Houston so Playtex flew people to Houston and essentially begged to be allowed to submit a suit into the competition at their own expense. They weren't going to use any of NASA's money. They were just going to do it themselves. They said, just give us a shot. They just wanted to be tested alongside the others. They only had 6 weeks to develop this suit. And they opted for a layer design, and each suit had 21 layers of fabric. After its furious abbreviated development and production, the Playtex suit went head-to-head with its rivals in a demanding series of side-by-side tests. During one, the helmet of one of the competing suits blew off with the test subject inside.
That's not good.
The other competitor's suit had shoulders so wide that once inflated for the surface test, the astronaut couldn't climb back in through the hatch of the mock-up lunar vehicle. The Playtex suit, by far, was judged the best. Later, to bolster its case, Playtex produced a completely different kind of tryout. It sent Tom Sylvester, one of its suit testing technicians, out to the football field at Dover High School near the Delaware factory. He was dressed in an early version of Playtex Apollo suit with attached air hoses and everything, and he was accompanied by the staff, and he played football for several hours in the suit while being filmed with a colleague who was dressed in ordinary street clothes. And he has a quote in here. He said, "I ran, I kicked, I punted, and I passed," says Sylvester in a documentary about the moon missions. It was just this crazy story about how NASA, this extremely male-dominated industry, basically had to capitulate.
Saved by girdles.
Yeah, they were saved by girdles. Playtex brought skilled seamstresses over from its consumer product factories. I love this quote. This is a quote from one of the seamstresses. She says, "I was sewing latex baby pants," said Eleanor Forker, who had go on to a spacesuit assembly supervisor. So she ended up being the supervisor. She says, "And an engineer came to me and asked if I might want to try something a little different." And it is funny because some of the layers were, in fact, composed of bra and girdle material.
Wow.
Well,
and even more fascinating, Playtex to this day still continues to make NASA spacesuits.
Really?
Yeah, they had their own division now, ILC Dover, but that is completely made for making NASA spacesuits from its headquarters at 1 Moonwalker Road.
I love it.
It was just a fascinating story. And actually, they mention how it's a crazy enough story to be made a movie. And it has been the option for a movie has been bought already, but it hasn't been made yet. But it is a crazy story.
I gotta say, you set me up pretty perfectly for the next one. That does sound like a pretty incredible movie. I am going to talk about 15 incredible films that almost never got made. So
we planned that.
We did somehow.
I'm kidding. I had no idea you were talking about films.
I was thinking of how to bring space to films, and I was like, I don't know. And then
I did it for you
right at the end. I got to say thank you very much. Yeah, my discovery is about 15 incredible films that almost never got made. Number one is Psycho. It almost never got made. Because the studio thought it was too repulsive and too gross. So basically what happened is the studio made an agreement where the way that he got paid, Hitchcock, would be 60% of the movie's gross instead of his salary, which was $250,000.
I'm waiting to see how much money that turned into for him.
Exactly. And he basically funded the film as well. So he just made a ton of money. That was probably the only really big thing on that one. But as you might imagine, it was probably reading the script was at the time like, this could never happen.
No, and I mean, don't get me wrong. It's pretty shocking, even like when you look at it by today's standards, because they headlined like a main character and they murdered her brutally at the very beginning of the movie. And it's a very famous death scene, and that was their star that was on all their posters and everything.
Crazy.
So then what's left? Crazy people.
And the reason it's black and white was to save money on production, which I thought was pretty great.
It looks great.
Didn't cost as much. Yeah, exactly. The other one, probably most notoriously, is Star Wars. This one, of course, budget issues, but also the actors and everyone involved with it thought it was garbage. Harrison Ford was quoted as saying, "George, you can type this shit, but you can't say it." And Alec Guinness, who played Obi-Wan, was quoted as saying, he received new rubbish dialogue reaches me every other day on wadges of pink paper, and none of it makes my character clear or even bearable. I just think, thankfully, of the lovely bread, which will help me keep going until next April.
So he's like, at least they're paying me. But
Yeah, exactly.
Dog poop.
And I mean, first of all, like Alec Guinness they hit way out of their weight class with Alec Guinness.
100%.
Yeah, didn't we learn that he was basically the biggest actor in the movie?
Oh, by far, not even close. Not even close. He was in Lawrence of Arabia. He was in Bridge on the River Kwai. He was in all these and I think he was Shakespearean. Like he was a huge actor. So I don't know how they convinced him to do it.
It's like Psycho. It's like to say Alec Guinness is in the film, but he's really only in it for a very short amount of time.
Yeah, he really is.
He's like, well, I'll give you I don't know, 2/3 of this movie and then I'm out of here.
And even reportedly, George Lucas, he went and instead of going to the premiere, just went to Hawaii with Steven Spielberg. He's like, this isn't going to be good. And of course it was.
It was all right.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I love Star Wars.
Yeah. Star Wars. I don't know. I don't get it. What is it in space? No. And of course, all of these movies I'm going to mention obviously had budget issues. So that's probably the number one reason for all of them. The number 3 is Titanic. That almost didn't get made, mostly because of budgetary stuff. But, and this is pretty wild, I did not know much of this. Kate Winslet kept getting colds, flu, or kidney infections due to long hours spent in cold water. 3 stuntmen had broken their bones, while several other crew members left the production altogether. And even though Kate Winslet almost begged James Cameron to let her play Rose after working on the movie, she pledged to never work with the director again unless she, quote, earned a lot of money. And this is pretty wild. One day during lunch, someone put the dissociative drug PCP in people's soups during lunchtime. And, quote, there were people just rolling around completely out of it. Some of them said they were seeing streaks in psychedelics.
What?
Yeah. The drug sent 50 people to the hospital.
Oh my God.
And did they ever figure out who did? I don't know if it probably says it in the article, but that's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? And then James Cameron, after he made the movie and they were like, we're going to cut the movie because it was too long. He said, you want to cut my movie? You're going to have to fire me. You want to fire me? You're going to have to kill me. So no one enjoyed working on that movie. But here it is, being so great. Back to the Future. Back to the Future almost didn't get made. And this one's weird because they thought it was gross that a mother falling in love with her son was not appropriate for a family film.
Yeah, there's definitely the Movies That Made Us episode about Back to the Future that's great.
Yeah. That's a great show, by the way. Have you watched that show, Matt?
I have not yet.
Oh, you need to find it. I mean, you need to watch it. It's on Netflix. It's really good. We learned a lot about Home Alone was another one that almost didn't get made. I don't know if it's on the list, but that was a really fascinating one. Yeah. Huh. And Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters was another one. That was a crazy one. But everyone thought that was a really stupid idea.
Definitely in Back to the Future, his mom kisses him. So that's
he's weird. That was really the main reason on that one. And of course,
ew.
Budget issues. Number 5 was Little Miss Sunshine, which is weird.
For budget?
Yeah, I don't know if that one was budget, right?
Well, it was. They just couldn't get a studio to back it because there wasn't enough star power, which is crazy to me because Alan Alda's in it, and so is Greg Kinnear and Toni Collette.
And Paul Dano is in that too, right? And Steve
that
Carell.
might have been one of his first ones, though.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I guess maybe we're looking back on it like differently because all those people are big now, but they weren't at the time.
I guess.
And I mean, you're kind of looking at a series of people who are not like overwhelmingly like normal likable, so it's not your typical movie. So they were probably kind of in that indie space, and people are just like, no, you can't make a movie about somebody just try to commit suicide going on a road trip with his dysfunctional family.
Well, it's just so crazy because the studios didn't want to get involved because there were no movie stars and there was no foreseeable foreign box office for it, which is so crazy because down here it says it received 81 award wins and like literally proved everyone wrong.
I think it's a really good movie.
It's amazing.
I've never seen that whole movie.
It's really good.
Amazing.
It's worth the watch.
Oh, love it.
I just had the van. That's all.
Yeah, you did have a van exactly like that.
That was a beautiful van. I miss my van.
I'm sure everybody knows about Toy Story being almost not made because of Disney and Pixar issues. So I'm not going to go too in depth about that. But supposedly John Lasseter, he had to like really negotiate with rewriting scripts because even Tom Hanks said while recording one of the dialogues at one point exclaimed that Woody was a real jerk, which is weird because he's not like that now.
I wonder if it was just way too hard on Buzz.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because I mean, if it was that first one where he's like trying to get him out of there, if Woody was like a psychopath the whole time, they're like, this is not likable. This is not good. But they're about to have issues again. I think Pixar and Disney.
Really?
Pixar's all mad because they pushed one of their movies straight to stream rather than going to box office. The one about it's about a red panda or something.
Oh, shoot. I don't even think I've even seen that one.
And see, that's the problem. That's a Pixar movie.
All right. There are a lot of them on this list, so I am just going to go to a few more of them, and then we'll move on to another one. If you want to check them out, it's 15 incredible films that almost didn't get made on Board Panda. I love that site.
And it's in the show notes.
It is. But lastly, The Wizard of Oz. I don't know if anybody knew this, but the actor who played the Tin Man, Buddy Epson, kept getting sick from his makeup. That silver stuff made him very sick, and it exchanged 3 different directors' hands because the first guy, let's find him real quick. George Cukor was whose replacement? What? Wait, Richard Thorpe was the first director, and they replaced him after the Tin Man kept getting sick. They're like, you'd stop painting him.
It would be if only it were that easy, right?
Yeah, right. He's like, no, my vision. No, they replaced him with George.
He's the Tin Man, not the normal man.
Replaced him with George Cukor, who later left the film to work on Gone with the Wind. But then Victor Fleming took his place, but not for long because George Cukor got himself fired from Gone with the Wind by Clark Gable. And it says the rumor was that it's because Gable found out that George Cukor was gay, and then he came back to work on The Wizard of Oz. And this was, of course, the time when anybody gave a shit about that.
Yeah.
But pretty wild. It's pretty fascinating to listen to all these things, especially with hindsight, because these are all amazing movies. Like Pulp Fiction's on this list, The Exorcist, The Omen.
So like all the classic movies.
Yeah, all movies that you really enjoy. It's basically like, I always think about it in terms of risk. If you took risks as a filmmaker to make the thing that everyone said couldn't get made, it's probably going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to see how much Hollywood doesn't know what people want.
Right? It's true.
Because it just feels like they're always getting it wrong. They're like, this is going to be garbage, and it's amazing. And then they're like, this is going to be great, and it's garbage.
Yep.
Hold on, I got to bring this up. This is pretty funny. One on the list is Being John Malkovich.
Okay, and that makes sense.
One of the studio chairmen asked Kaufman. He's like, "Why the fuck can't it be being Tom Cruise?"
Okay, I mean that perfectly explains the perspective of a producer.
Yeah, pretty funny.
That's pretty funny.
But I mean, saying that to Kaufman, I would love to hear his response to that, because that's not the guy to say that to. He never picks like major leads. Well, I guess Jim Carrey kind of in Eternal Sunshine. But other than that,
John Cusack was in this with the Charlie's Angel, Cameron Diaz. I mean,
that one's more so. But like adaptation was Nick Cage, and I mean, don't get me wrong, that like an amazing movie. But yeah, he didn't necessarily care about I need star power as my lead. And he kind of in like Eternal Sunshine, he kind of went against type with Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
He gave him like a normal movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to hear the conversation. I would love to hear how Kaufman responded to that. He's like, I'm not putting Tom Cruise in my movie, you idiot.
You dipshit.
Okay, and now a quick word from our sponsors.
30 seconds. Ignition sequence start. Here we got a roll program.
It's not rocket surgery. The latest in science, technology, and geek culture.
Astronauts report it feels good.
Sunday nights from 10:30. Broadcast and streaming live. Podcast at all the usual podcast places. Follow and like us on Facebook and on Twitter at RCKTSRGRY.
Houston, we've had a problem. Computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions. The Eagle has landed.
So I discovered this week an invention of Ben Franklin's that you should hopefully be able to hear in just a moment. This is called the Glass Harmonica. And this was because Ben Franklin saw someone. Have you ever seen somebody like dip their finger in water and play a wine glass?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He saw somebody doing that, but he made an invention so that it was more like an instrument. So
oh my gosh.
Hopefully you're going to hear this right now.
It's called the Armonica, which is derived from the Italian word for harmony, and you can play 10 bowls at once. People have described it as like the sound of angels singing. It's very ethereal. It's a delicate sound. It's kind of creepy maybe, but also very beautiful.
So I just played that for the guys as well. And I heard this instrument. I was like, wow, this thing sounds crazy. But then it gets crazier. So this is not like a new idea. Ben Franklin invented the arrangement there, where it wasn't like a bunch of cups on a table and you play one by one. You can play 10 notes simultaneously with Ben Franklin's harmonica. But he basically saw somebody playing this, and it was in 1762. Or no, he saw him playing in 1761, and it was water-filled wine glasses in Cambridge, England. But then he worked with a London glassblower to build one, and it premiered in 1762. And this never really got big because it was hard to amplify at the time. You know, there wasn't traditional amplifiers, so the sound would kind of get lost in an orchestra. But a lot of people used this at the time. Mozart wrote a piece specifically for the glass harmonica. Beethoven used it. Actually, Marie Antoinette took lessons on it from someone named Franz Anton Mesmer. And this led me down a rabbit hole.
Mesmerized.
Yes, that is 100% where the word mesmerized came from, because Mesmer is a strange guy who thought that everyone had special body fluids that like controlled mood. So he made up this thing called animal magnetism. About this
before, I think
we might have
vaguely
weird,
but yeah, it was somebody. I think it was somebody mentioned it once in like an episode of something. But yeah, he basically had all this, and then he basically laid the groundwork for hypnotism, and so that's why mesmerized is literally it's like a synonym for hypnotized, because a guy named Franz Mesmer used to, and I mean, it was called animal magnetism at the beginning, but he eventually referred to it as mesmerism. So, I mean, it's one of those things where he kind of pigeonholed that terminology. But yeah, so he became a thing. And at the end of each of his hypnosis therapies, he would play a glass harmonica. He owned one of these, and he would play this to like end it. But then on top of that, this thing has a weird reputation, and I'm sure it was just the time. It was just the time when it was happening, and you can't ever tell. But this had a really bad reputation for purported dangers. So it didn't have a lot of popularity past the 18th century. And that was partially, like I said, because you can't really amplify it very well at the time. But there's also strange rumors, because apparently if you listen to it, the musicians and the listeners go mad. But it's it was a lot of them. But basically they said that you should if you're playing it, you can go insane, and then also hearing it. But I mean, you think about 1700s, they hear this thing that sounds like that. I do think it sounds very ethereal.
Yeah, it sounds like
strange.
Something you would hear in a horror movie, for real. It doesn't sound bad, but it just has this weird ominous sound to it.
See, I pictured the Harry Potter theme being played on it.
Yeah, honestly, I think that would work. But so here's one of the alleged effects that was noted by German musicologist Johann Friedrich Rochlitz. And here's what he said. The harmonica excessively stimulates the nerves, plunges the player into a nagging depression, and hence into a dark and melancholy mood. That is an apt method for slow self-annihilation. And then he basically said this is his warnings after it. If you're suffering from any nervous disorder, you should not play it. If you're not yet ill, you should not play it excessively. If you're feeling melancholy, you should not play it, or else play uplifting pieces. But yeah, it became this whole thing of they thought it made you sad. They thought that literally hearing or playing this would mess with you. And then some people said they gave you lead poisoning because they're using lead glass. Once again, there's no scientific basis for this. But they said it, and it was the 1700s. So if you said, they're like, well, that man knows what he's talking about because he said it. But yeah, now this has kind of come back a little bit because it's so interesting and such a strange tone. I don't think of it. I mean, you could probably get something like it with synths because you can just kind of create what you want out of it. But as far as a physical instrument that makes this sound, I can't think of anything that sounds anything like that.
No, it's a very unique sound. And the device, to give a visual for those that are only listening to this, is it looks like a lathe with a bunch of stacks of glasses that get progressively larger.
Yeah, and that's basically it. I think it's 37, I think it said. I can't. And
I did notice that some were colored on the rim and the other ones weren't, almost like a piano. You have
I think
white and black keys.
Your notes. And so what you would do is it's it is like a lathe. It's kind of at a little bit of an angle, and you can play 10 notes because you can use all your fingers, and just it rotates because of a pedal you have, and you just put your fingers on it. You're still supposed to.
And it works just now. I was wondering. So do you put your fingers in the water, or is there some mechanism that keeps
No, I think you dip your fingers in water.
Gotcha.
And then do the same thing.
So funny.
That's so funny. It's wow, I have this idea of an invention. I saw someone chopping wood. What if I made a wood chopper and it's just a bunch of axes on a lathe? It's like a bunch of axes combined into one weird thing.
Sounds like the invention from Beauty and the Beast that the dad had.
Yeah.
That weird chopping machine. No, that's fascinating. I want someone to make an orchestra of nothing but weird instruments like this.
They're called Blue Man Group.
But remember we learned about, what was that other one? It was it had a water basin thing, and it's specifically used
the horror movie one, right?
For horror movies. Yeah. It's a really weird looking one. We talked about it on the show a long time ago.
Water something.
Mm-hmm.
It's a glass. No, yeah. What is that called? Water.
I can't remember, but I know what you're talking about. I love that thing. Makes crazy sounds.
Yeah, and there's just really weird instruments that are not used regularly, and it would be really cool to have somebody that just makes an orchestra of nothing but obscure instruments.
Yeah,
it would sound crazy.
And we know that we'd all go insane if we listened to it.
It would sound crazy because it would make you crazy.
Yeah.
Speaking of crazy things, I just read this article me and Zach were just recording our other podcast that we do with work, which is an ag podcast. And one of the discoveries that we were talking about in there, which is an ag-based discovery or innovation, was something that I thought was fascinating. It's a really short one because I just want to pick one of these out, but it's a laser scarecrow. So basically, since forever, birds have been an issue for farmers, especially grain farmers. It says on here, and I mean, this is an ag website, so I'm sure that they know the statistics. Pests like starlings, blackbirds, and crows can destroy up to 75% of crops within 48 hours of harvest, leading to huge losses in revenue. Growers have tried everything in the name of pest control, from traditional scarecrows to propane cannons, none of which have outrun the evolutionary wit of nature. We here in where me and Zach live, there's a lot of strawberry growers, and sometimes the robins will come down and they have those propane cannons that they put out there. They don't actually shoot anything. It's a really loud noise. So it sounds like a pipe bomb that goes off every like 15 minutes. It scares off the birds. But recently, a researcher from the University of Rhode Island has invented a new deterrent to keep these birds away. The Laser Scarecrow Project, it projects green laser lighting not visible by humans in the sun. They are effective due to birds' sensitivity to the color green. The automated laser darts across fields up to 600 feet and effectively startles birds enough to prevent them from destroying any crop. They're less environmentally destructive and much less labor intensive, because I guess the other alternative is to basically net your whole field, like put a net over it, which has got to be like an insane amount of labor to do that and infrastructure. And especially for grain crops, that's, you're talking about thousands of acres. There have been different variations of the laser technology, some of which came solar powered, which I think that's awesome because a lot of these are in the middle of nowhere. It's farms. With an auto-targeting system on birds, which I think sounds hilarious. So I'm literally visualizing like a little robot that just points a laser at the bird and scares it off. Like we used to have those laser pointers back in the day. Y'all remember those things?
Oh yeah.
We used to get in trouble at school with them and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But also, I think it would be really cool for those farms that want to have like a nice barn party and you just have like a laser show out there at night. That'd be freaking awesome. But yeah, it's really fascinating. Apparently they've even used it as, pest control for pest control companies. And they said that it's worked really well for that too. It's a silent tactic that doesn't disrupt neighbors. It's highly effective. And to date, it comes with a very low chance of birds adapting to its scare tactics. Because that's the thing, is like scarecrows work until the crow realizes, hey, that's just a straw person. And then they go stand on it and they use it as somewhere to rest instead of it being, scary to them. So that's where the laser scarecrow comes in. Pew, pew. Pew, pew.
Well, let's go over my last discovery. I don't know why I just said it like that.
Let us go over Matt's last discovery.
I don't know if we've talked about this before. I don't believe so, but have you all talked about the Noid and how you don't see the Noid anymore?
No, I don't even know if I know what the Noid is.
All right. Well, Domino's had a mascot called the Noid, and the whole idea of the Noid was that the Noid was basically your friend who just ate your pizza but never contributed to it, But he looked like basically a man wearing a bunny costume that was red. It's very strange. Very strange.
I think I have seen this. Okay, now that I feel like this is a weird Mandela effect.
Yeah, it's weird. But it kind of disappeared, and here's why: is because the Noid. There was a guy named. Let me find his name real quick. But basically, there was a schizophrenic man who would see these commercials. They would play these commercials, and this schizophrenic man named Kenneth Lamar Noid, he walked into a Domino's Pizza and took the employees hostage.
Oh, God.
Because he thought the Noid that they were making fun of him and they were talking about him.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So basically, they, after this whole incident, they just were like, nope, we're not doing that anymore. He went to a mental institution, but eventually died by his own hand in 1995. So Domino's was like, maybe we shouldn't. Let's just stop with the Noid, which is absolutely crazy. A crazy way to just totally wipe your branding. The Noid was huge for anybody who was around during those times. It was like everywhere. He was a little claymation guy bouncing around. So the fact that they just were like, nope, is pretty wild, and but also very understandable.
I was reading the Wikipedia article about it. Does the one that you're reading talk about his hostage scenario?
Yeah, well, a little bit. While he was had them hostage, he got hungry, so he had them make a pizza for him.
Yeah.
Which this is tongue in cheek states that effectively keeping the namesake of the Noid of getting pizza without paying for it, which is a little, dark, but nonetheless, kind of funny.
He forced the Domino's employees to call headquarters and demand $100,000 in a white limousine as a getaway transportation. But instead,
you didn't blame him.
He was. It's a crazy story. It's a crazy story.
That's wild.
They ended up the hostages ended up escaping. I think while he was eating his pizza.
Oh God.
Yes, a very interesting history thing.
Well, I do have an Amazon discovery this week that no one should ever buy.
No.
I did tell Kirk, one of my secret things for finding these is you just search tactical with any kind of normal word. And I
Did
found
you search
one.
tactical banana?
No, this is a tactical mug. And by tactical mug, I mean the dumbest possible way to spend $60.
Oh my God.
This is a mug that has rails on it like an assault rifle would. So you can attach like scopes to it. And the top is literally like a handle for an assault rifle. And
what the heck?
Okay, take a look at the bottom picture of the pictures. It's hilarious. I think they're kind of self-aware.
They have to be. Yes.
This is also just like made in China garbage that who knows what it's going to be. But here's a little bit about this item. Comes with aluminum alloy material, so this cup can storage almost any kinds of liquid. Safe and durable.
Storage it. Yes.
Can storage boiling water and cold water. Hot water up to 120 degrees Celsius, and it breaks all that down. And this mug cup with good heat dissipation is uneasy to hurt your skin when you touch it with hot liquid. Black anodized material can prevent further oxidation, making this cup corrosion resistant, durable for you to use outdoors. Lightweight mug cup is easy for you to carry and will reduce your burden when you want to recycle it. The side of this tactical cup can attach 3 Picatinny Weaver rails.
Yeah, that's what those rails are called.
Yeah. Suitable and convenient for you to carry spotting scope, tripod, and flashlight, etc. that can be attached on rail when you're camping and hunting. And there's one review here that I think pretty much sums it up, so I'll just read you this one. I bought this because it was undeniably cool. In that role, it excels. It never fails to serve as a conversation starter when my colleagues notice it. The carry handle is real. I could remove it and it would function perfectly, including the rear sight assembly. Sadly, chuckles and compliments from coworkers are all about all this cup is good for. Turns out aluminum isn't a very good insulator. This leads to the 2 main problems with this as a coffee cup. First, drinking fresh coffee from it is an exercise in masochism. Approximately 102% of the coffee's heat is transferred to the aluminum cup immediately upon pour, making it painful to put on your mouth. Second, it doesn't keep coffee hot for anything close to a reasonable amount of time. My coffee is always cold by the time I reach the bottom, and I drink coffee at an alarming rate. Finally, the accessory rails on all but one side of the cup mean you can only drink from the smooth side of the cup, with the handle facing to the right, making this the world's first and only non-ambidextrous coffee mug. Yes, you can remove the carry handle and place it on the left instead of the right, but you're still stuck using one hand or the other exclusively. I don't regret my purchase because the cool factor goes a long way, but I don't know that I'd buy it again if I had the chance. And I can't recommend it to anyone who would buy it to drink from in good conscience. So,
oh my God.
I think my favorite thing about this whole ad campaign for the advertising for this cup is that they picked what looks like a white supremacist. It's an angry white dude as the model for the cup.
He literally just has a grumpy face and like an Affliction t-shirt.
He looked like he's holding a torch under the camera. So he's just ready to go.
But yeah, so don't buy that, but it's there. It exists.
That is the stupidest thing ever.
And with that, we will talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.